I'd like to call the March 3rd, 2026 regular meeting of the Eugene Water Electric Board to order. The first agenda item this evening is for me to give you a facility and safety awareness and meeting logistics briefing. I want to thank you for attending the meeting, and the EWEB management and subject matter experts are present in the room and virtually. The meeting is being streamed live and recorded. Please speak loudly and clearly so everybody can hear you. Public testimony is welcome. Sign-up forms are over here at the back of the room. Visitor access is limited to the board meeting room and restrooms. Restrooms are located on the first floor, exit through the right-hand door at the front of the room and across the hallway. In the event of an emergency, such as fire or security incident, follow all instructions given by staff. If evacuation is required, please calmly proceed to the nearest safety exit as identified and directed by staff, and evacuate away from the building to the farthest points in the parking lots and allow clear and immediate access for first responders. That said is one thing. So the next agenda item is going to be the agenda check. Is there anybody have any changes to the agenda? It looks like our sign up for public testimony will fall within the limits that's budgeted. So, and we'll allow the full 3 minutes, not like last meeting. So we're good there. Anything else? Okay, items from board members. I'll start with Commissioner Schlossberg. Nothing. Commissioner Morris.
I do have two things. Thank you, Chair. First, on March 6th, the LCOG is having a fundraising dinner. And so if you are free that night, I encourage you to join. It's, I believe, a fundraiser for senior Meals on Wheels. So it's a good charity as well as a good dinner as well. So highly recommend that. And then I believe other commissioners were invited. I'm unsure if you were able to attend, but I believe a couple weeks ago we were able to see the inside of the College Hill water storage, which was very cool. It was incredible to see. And staff did an amazing job explaining the process and explaining what the construction looks like, what community outreach looked like. And I had the unbelievable pleasure to be leaving as a group of families and children were coming in. And it was so cool to see so many young folks also excited to see that. So just wanted to highlight it for y'all, and staff did a really great job in explaining what was going on. So thanks to the team.
Thank you. Commissioner Carlson.
Couple of quick things. I'm bummed that I was not able to attend. Unfortunately, I was under the weather that day, but I have attended in the past. And I know it's a really wonderful experience. So I also echo the LCOG dinner. I will be there on Friday, and other things are happening, but I'm gonna announce it anyway. And then I wanted to say a quick thing about a constituent that contacted me with some recommendations. Around if we do put a fee around smart meters, or talking more on the bill itself around having a connection to the fees that are charged. I know it's kind of clearly delineated, but I don't think people understand how the stormwater fee actually relates to the amount of water gallons used. That was one comment they made. And then they're another person, they're on the budget billing system, and they recommended having like a cumulative running total of if you're above or below, so that you could kind of see. I thought that was a really good recommendation, because I think there is kind of a true up over time. And so if that's set at one amount and it's way over or it's way under, they kind of have a sense of where that's going to go over time. And then they also gave a kudos to staff. They testified last month about the speed challenge, which low-income customers have issues like it opens up and then everybody's on there. And so they made some tweaks to that, and it apparently helped this person and others access the resources in a more equitable way. So however you all went about doing that, we appreciate it, and it was noted. So thank you.
Mr. Borowski.
Thank you. Last month at the Mackenzie Watershed Council, we had a presentation from the U of O project. We had a presentation a few years back where we donated some land for an experimental project that was being put forward by a doctoral student at the U of O regarding carbon sequestration and habitat restoration and how those intertwine. They are 3 years into that project now, had a very, so they're starting to get data. that is there. It was very fascinating. You know, they took the land that we had donated to them, plotted it all out into 10-meter square type of plots, figured out which species of tree is growing best and sequestering the carbon the best. They're also looking at the soils and figuring out how much carbon sequestration is going into soils. So this is a 10-year study that EWEB has helped to fund and move forward. Some very engaged graduate students working on it out there pulling weeds and making sure and testing all these things. So it was very encouraging to see that project moving forward. I think that at some point, if we have a light agenda time, it would be great to get an update back from them on that in the coming years or so. I'm sure that would be something that they'd be interested in doing. But I know our agendas are very full, but I think this is an exciting project moving forward, where in the future, if we can quantify the work that we're doing in habitat restoration and how that moves into carbon sequestration, I think that's a really good dovetail that can go together, so we can use our money for habitat restoration and yet do carbon offsetting at the same time. So it's an exciting, challenging research project that I was very happy to see. So that's that. Thanks.
Okay. I'll jump in and then go to the general manager. I have several items. As many of you know, I've spent 4 days back in Washington, D.C. last week with Jason, our lobbyist, and there were 15 of us. There were people from Wasco County, from Central Lincoln, from Springfield Utility Board. It was a good cross-representation, and almost without exception, every time we'd go into either a congressman or senator's office, the very first thing that the lobbyist would say, well, one of the biggest concerns is we want to make sure that the new BPA administrator has area knowledge. And everyone looked at me and said, well, you caused the problem. And so because we hired that. And so that made me feel kind of good, because I know we made a good decision. But we had some good input. There was a lot of, there's some concern about the efforts of some people trying to privatize Bonneville, which created some discussion. There was discussion about the 13 dams in the Willamette region that have been, 6 of them generate power, but they're the worst performing dams in the entire portfolio, and how we are strapped. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, about paying for part of their the programs they're doing now, and we've kind of said we would prefer that we just stop generating power because they're so inefficient, and things such as that. And other things about Oregon suing Bonneville, and then the court just ruled last week that to increase the spill, which is going to increase our rates, and which surprised me why Oregon but that's another thing, that's political. But they got a temporary injunction, and they're going to increase the spill out of the Bonneville system. But the good news is everybody was predicting that because of low snowpack in the Cascades, but the Bonneville, the Canadian water system is 104%. And so they're not predicting any shortages and power shortages and curtailment on that. So that's number one. Number two, I too attended one of the College Hill sessions. Great. I want to hats off to Laura Farthing and her group. They do an absolutely outstanding job of community relations and explaining things and bringing it down to a layperson's level, and very good. The other thing, I just got a notice on my email that they're going to start fluctuating the flow in Cougar starting March 6th, and they're going to mess with the flows on the Mackenzie for a week, and to try and flush the salmon out. And they're concerned about the downriver people because the river's pretty low right now because of low snowpack, and what that's going to do about fluctuating the river because it's atypical. So the Corps of Engineers is doing that. And this, just for the record, I may not be here for the October meeting, so Sonia, put it on your calendar. Okay, that's an aside. General Manager.
President Brown, Commissioners, good evening. Just a couple of things of note. I just wanted to clarify a comment, Commissioner Borowski, that you made. We did not donate the land. We still own the land. They're just working with us on land that we own. So just want to make sure everybody knows we didn't sell land without you knowing it. You are correct, Commissioner Brown, on the cost allocation of the Willamette system. That's the issue that we've held, that too much of the costs are allocated toward power generation and not the other purposes that those dams serve, such as flood control. And so That's been the issue on the Willamette for a number of years now. So that's all I have this evening. And Commissioner Carlson, we could probably arrange for a special tour for you since you missed it. I'm volunteering somebody behind my back probably, but we'll make it happen.
All right, the next agenda item is correspondence, General Manager.
I think there was only one piece of correspondence this evening, Commissioners, really a legislative update. I do know that Jason Huser is feeling a little under the weather. I don't know if he's actually here to answer questions or not. Looks like he's there. He may not show up on camera. If you had questions for Jason, there's a lot of moving pieces here. This is only a snapshot of the many moving pieces. So if you had specific questions, I'm sure Jason would be happy to answer them.
Questions? If not, then we're done with correspondence.
Yep.
Okay, then good. So the next agenda item is going to be the public input, and I will read the preamble to the public input before I open the public input session. I would just like to welcome everybody to the public input session for this meeting. We're a public non-for-profit organization whose charter is to deliver drinking water and electricity to our community. Although this forum is not used for an open back and forth dialogue, commissioners and staff value hearing diverse perspectives and receiving community input. Speakers are asked to keep their testimony relevant to EWEB business and request that everyone share their comments in a productive and respectful manner. Should speakers or audience members become disruptive, they may be muted and or removed from the meeting. At this time, we have, I think, one caller and 8 signed up to in-person speakers. So when your name called, you'll have 3 minutes to provide your comments. The public input session is now open. Looks like I have some more. Thank you. Okay. So the first will be on the end caller, and I believe that's Doug Myers. Doug, are you there? Doug?
Indeed.
Have you unmuted your phone, Doug?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Well, your 3 minutes is ready to start, so go ahead. Thank you.
President Brown, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Doug Myers, an EWEB ratepayer and customer living in the Bethel neighborhood in Ward 6. And thank you, EWEB, for considering ballot measure 20-373. EWEB provides good services, and I know you make good efforts at communicating with your constituent ratepayers. However, I strongly oppose your draft resolution. And in my judgment, you have failed spectacularly to communicate with me why I should believe your drafted position is any other than one adverse to me in protecting the watershed from which I am provided water. It appears to me that you're simply unable or unwilling to raise the bar. Before I grant you the benefit of the doubt, it will be necessary for EWEB first to communicate the specific history of their position on each of the acts and the rules cited in your draft resolution when each of these were under consideration and prior to their effectivity. Second, have you now engaged in good faith with the proponents of Measure 20-373 as your specific concerns with that measure? Communicating after you've adopted this resolution will be considered by me to be an adverse action by EWEB inconsistent with your best efforts to maintain good communication with your rate-paying customers. I respectfully urge you to table this item until you fully communicated with us as recipients of the water from our watershed. Thank you for considering my views.
Thank you, Doug. The next speaker will be Rob Dickinson, followed by Nick Squires.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rob Dickinson speaking in support of Measure 20. Should I wait until you're? Yeah, hi, I'm Rob Dickinson speaking in support of Measure 20-373. Last month, this board delayed action on a resolution opposing the measure so there would be time for clarification and dialogue. We took that seriously. We asked EWEB to identify the 3 or 4 specific projects or programs they believe would face increased legal risk if Measure 2373 was passed, and to explain why that risk is greater with the measure than without it. We also asked for a staff contact so we could review the concerns quickly with legal counsel. We had our pro bono legal counsel standing by, ready to respond to whatever we would learn. We never received those specifics. Instead, we heard only the general claim that the measure is too broad and therefore could have implications for EWEB. That leaves the public and us responding without the information needed for a fair and deliberative process. And the too broad critique isn't persuasive on its own. Many of our most important protections are written broadly. The First Amendment doesn't spell out every circumstance, what you can say, what you can't say, where you can say it, or every limit. It sets a principle that courts apply to real situations. Broad does not mean unworkable. Broad often means durable and adaptable. In fact, many of the laws, essential laws that we rely upon to protect our community and ourselves and our health and safety were broad when originally introduced. In fact, for some major projects, the rights of nature principles that are encoded in our measure could actually help EWEB. Take, for example, the possible Lieberg Dam removal. We've heard commissioners acknowledge that EWEB may be sued by adjacent residents regardless of this measure. Our legal advisors believe recognizing watershed rights could strengthen the case for removal because it benefits river health and the species that depend on it. In other words, this measure can reinforce rather than undermine the legal and moral basis for actions that restore a river system. And in fact, if this Lieberg Dam project, for example, is one of the more important or biggest projects that you're doing in a long time, having a stronger legal footing there is probably as important of an action as you could take. Ultimately, any claim under Measure 20-373 would still turn on evidence of real harm to the watershed. If EWEB is operating responsibly and protecting water quality, then the measure shouldn't create meaningful new exposure. It targets actions that pollute, impair, or degrade watersheds, not the everyday work of providing clean drinking water and stewarding the public trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Squires, followed by Aaron Nielsen.
I make a quick note before my time starts. I only have 50% hearing in my ear, so if my tone comes off as loud, I have a hard time moderating the volume of my voice. I'm not trying to yell. And I do that a lot as a teacher, so I just wanted to make that clear. And I'm ready. Good evening. My name is Nick, and I'm an EWEB customer owner. Every one of you sits in that chair because the people of Eugene put you there, and they put you there with the understanding that your promise is to them, not a corporation, not a timber company. I'm here tonight because I'm not sure that promise is being kept. Commissioner Borowski has introduced a resolution asking this board to oppose Measure 20373, to stand against the people trying to protect our water. And the people deserve to know why. On October 7th, Commissioner Borowski asked staff for a report on 20373. Exactly 1 week later, according to public filings, he received a $2,500 contribution from timber executive Dan Justina. Justina is the largest single donor to both his EWEB and city council campaigns. This accounts for roughly 1/4 of his total contributions. I will let that speak for itself, but it goes deeper. Public records show that Borowski's own campaign treasurer, Jeff Green, is also the alternate finance filer for Protect Our County. The Political Action Committee organized to defeat Measure 20373. That PAC is run by the president of Oregon Forestry Industry Council. Its treasurer, Eric Parrish, personally contributed to Borowski's city council campaign. I don't know whether this board was made aware of these connections, but the people weren't. The chief petitioners of our measure never heard from them. Not 5 minutes, not 5 seconds. If Commissioner Borowski did not disclose these financial ties to his colleagues, that is a failure of transparency. If this board knew and moved forward anyway, that's a failure of accountability. Either way, the people deserved better. I'm not here to question anyone's character. I'm here I'm here asking for the integrity of this vote. Recusal for Commissioner Borowski is the only way to preserve it. The Mackenzie River does not write campaign checks. It only gives us our drinking water. Protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Nielsen, followed by Sue Pileggi.
Hello, my name is Erin Nelson, a Eugene resident and EWEB customer. I'm here as a supporter of Measure 20-373 to protect Lane County's watersheds, a goal I presumed EWEB and I would share. In the face of the very real climate crisis, we need to have courage to make new choices that reflect the benefit of communities, the environment, and local economies over profit, corporate greed, and extraction. This bill allows for community members to demand accountability for harm caused to the watershed via corporate pollution in a court of law beyond a reasonable doubt, founded on credible science that doesn't use uncertainty as a delay tactic when evidence of harm exists. This is not writing a blank check for lawsuits. Judges still retain the authority to dismiss meritless cases, and litigants can be held financially responsible for frivolous findings. If EWEB is doing everything in its power as a water utility to protect the watershed, this measure should strengthen their position in the community with environmental protection projects, not weaken it. It therefore stands that EWEB is not being transparent about where their loyalties lie. Oregon is one of the handful of states that places no limit on how much corporations can give to political campaigns, and the timber industry has for years donated more to lawmakers in this state than anywhere else in the nation. A 2021 analysis by the Oregonian Oregon Live found. These are the same timber industry executives that donated to John Borofsky's current campaign for city council and also when he ran for the commissioner of EWEB. These are the same timber companies that had their own taxes cut to cost local governments $3 billion to be able to provide services like libraries, prosecutors, and sheriff patrols. Yet it's our bill to protect the watersheds that will bankrupt the community and lead to service cuts. Corporations want to privatize the profits from their extractive activities and then leave the public to shoulder the costs. Ratepayers shouldn't have to choose between healthy watersheds and a healthy economy and access to services. They should be able to have both. Polluters need to pay their fair share and be held accountable for harm caused so ratepayers don't have to shoulder the burden. Vote yes on Measure 20-373. Thank you.
Next is Sue Pileggi, followed by Katie Geiser.
Hi, I'm Sue Pileggi, and I live in Ward 6, and I'm here in support of Measure 20-373. We need better protection for our watersheds. We all know that the limited protections that we now have, if they are enforced, are not enough and allow continued degradation of our water and the natural systems that support it. I'm going to bring up another illustration of how things can go awry. Morrow County in Eastern Oregon is a cautionary tale of what could come. Their water table is contaminated many times over what is considered safe levels of nitrates, causing an unprecedented number of cases of cancer and miscarriage. Morrow County is an agricultural area where Amazon built an enormous data center that uses massive amounts of water to cool their computers. The evaporation caused by this process increases nitrate levels from agricultural runoff many times over safe levels. Today, mega tech companies are in a land race as they rush to build capacity. These giant companies increased investment in data centers by 81% in 2024. Who will protect Lane County from this type of development and pollution? We all know that corporations are not people, and that giant corporations with Wall Street addresses only pretend to care about local communities with fancy window dressing. This kind of real threat from these types of companies is what EWEB should be concerned about. Measure 2373 will help. As board members, I urge you to take a stand in support of this measure. You, as the EWEB board, need to be forward-thinking, muster moral courage, and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Geiser, followed by Peter Dragovich.
Hello, my name is Katie Geiser, and I've been an EWEB ratepayer for almost 40 years. In that time, I have been amazed to watch your crews at work out in our community, especially in times of storm recovery. The public has much at stake in the quality of service provided by EWEB. I see this recognized in your recent comments in the Eugene Springfield Lookout on March 2nd. You have voiced concern that Measure 2373 will, quote, detract from the public trust in service providers, unquote. Very little needs to be mentioned in response to this, as we recently learned that the author of the board's resolution is backed by funding from our opponents. This is not a trust building experience regarding a public entity. The board has the ability and power to move beyond this situation and lead our community forward in supporting our environmental rights-based measure. We live in times that are rapidly changing, and we are being called upon to embolden our actions and find new leadership. The public is ripe for such change. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, quote, protecting our nation's healthy watersheds makes economic sense. Healthy, intact watersheds provide many ecosystem services that are necessary for our social and economic well-being. Preventing impairments in healthy watersheds protects valuable ecosystem services that provide economic benefits to society and prevent expensive replacement and restoration costs. Measure 2373 is in many ways an ally of EWEB. We encourage you to support our measure.
Thank you. Peter Dragovich, followed by Michelle Holman.
Peter Dragovich, Ward 5, regarding Resolution 2607, opposing the Watershed's Bill of Rights. If the language in the Bill of Rights is overly broad and vague, as your resolution claims, the measure, if passed by the public, will be tested in the courts. If the courts agree with your assessment, it will be struck down and your perceived problem goes away. If the courts uphold the measure, then you are wrong in your assessment. If it is in conflict with other laws, as your resolution claims, it will be tested in the courts. If a court strikes it down, your perceived problem goes away. If the court upholds the measure, then you are wrong in your assessment. The resolution states the Bill of Rights, quote, could hinder existing conservation efforts and ultimately detracts from the public's trust in water service providers, end quote. This is the most non-trusting, fear-mongering, anti-public statement I've come across in a while. If an issue arises, explain it to the public and either succeed in convincing the public your position is just or not. Don't make a statement that presupposes passage of the measure will ultimately detract from the public's trust in water service providers. Public trust is earned issue by issue, with engagement, not by avoidance. Consider where in day-to-day life will ultimately detract from the public's trust a valid statement. Does the possibility of a fender bender ultimately detract from public trust in transportation? Does the possibility of a bank robbery ultimately detract from public trust in banking? Divorce from marriage, bruises from sports? This feels like reaching for a reason when there's no substance behind the thought. The public needs to decide if the measure aligns with their desires without, I say this respectfully, without your misleading, ill-reasoned, heavy thumb on the scales of public debate. Vote no on Resolution 2607.
Thank you. Michelle Holman, followed by Bernadette Barrasso.
I'm Michelle Holman. I'm one of the 3 chief petitioners for Measure 20-373. Current environmental protections are insufficient to protect Lane County's watersheds from corporate harm. Do you think it's right that big corporations from outside of Lane County who should have more power and privilege to do harm in our communities than we have to protect ourselves from those harms? We wrote this law because we want better protections for nature and for all nature's creatures, including ourselves. We want a new baseline based on rights of the entire watershed. Measure 20-373 is not vague, it's fundamental. All fundamental rights are broad by design so they can respond to new threats, including the Bill of Rights. The right to clean water is no different. Courts interpret broad rights every day. What this measure does is set a clear priority. Watershed health is not subordinate to convenience or incremental damage. Current laws regulate pollution rather than prohibit it. Toxic chemicals in our watersheds and water supplies pose measurable risks to communities. The real danger is pollution, not protection. It is reasonable to promote stronger protections that are long overdue to safeguard public health and the environment. There are 668 reported nature protective initiatives in 60 countries across the globe, including 179 in the US, according to the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor. And now we have the very real threat of big AI data centers considering our county. Data centers require vast amounts of water for cooling, which can strain local resources and lead to health issues in nearby communities. Measure 23-73 is needed. It's clear that current environmental protection laws are not robust enough to protect Lane County from data centers. Measure 23-373 will be on the May 19th ballot. EWEB should remain neutral. Let the voters decide and let the democratic process play out.
Thank you. Bernadette Barassa, followed by Jim New.
Good evening. My name's Bernadette Barassa, and I'm aware of a project that EWEB is working on to pump water from the Willamette in the near future to supplement what is now available from the McKenzie. Well, since the Willamette is not as clean as what you currently obtain from the McKenzie, I'm guessing that there's going to be a large increase in the cost of filtering and purifying the water for your customers, unless your customer is going to be a big data center. Our measure 2343 comes into play as some of the entities who are currently adding pollutants to the Willamette would now be, if this law amendment passed, they would now be required to clean up their act, and any pollution they add to the Willamette, which your ratepayers wouldn't bear the cost of cleaning that up. It would be on them. I know Eugene's sewage treatment plant is downstream from where you currently pull water for your ratepayers. So that's not an issue, but what about the sewage treatment that goes into the Willamette from Cottage Grove and Goshen and all of the rural places that feed into the Willamette? There's more like cattle grazing, agricultural pollutants from people who don't grow organically. I made a short list. There's been gold mining going on down in Cottage Grove area for decades, and the pollutants that have been ongoing and seep into the river over time, it'll be on EWEB to clean that up. But there would be a little help if our measure passed. Anyway, and kind of the way that we're envisioning it is that people don't get to pollute the water in the first place, so then it doesn't cost so much to clean it up. Anyway, I'd like to use my final minutes to really applaud all the people who spoke before me. They speak a lot of truth, and I especially was impressed with Nick Squires and the gentleman whose name I didn't get. And anyway, everybody did a good job, and I hope you're listening. And the recusal part seems like a real decent thing to do.
Thank you. Jim New, followed by Patricia Hahn.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Jim New. I live in Ward 7. First, like to congratulate EWEB on their ODOE EV charging grants for your vehicles. That was good to see that. I find it ironic that the proponents and opponents of the Watershed Bill of Rights Measure 2373 all want the same result for our county: clean and safe water, drinking water protections, and effective management of our watershed and ecosystem. Folks who gathered thousands of signatures to get clean water security on the ballot have tirelessly advocated for our county's watershed, much like EWEB since the early 1900s. This measure looks to secure existing laws that ensure the integrity of water resources that are being stripped and dismantled by the current federal administration, as well as local polluters. Just last year, the EPA removed Clean Water Act protection for millions of acres of wetlands and streams, enacted a dirty water rule that undermines state water quality improvements, allowing the destruction of water bodies that serve drinking water to over 117 million Americans, and repeal the endangerment findings that will increase air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. EWEB claims the Watershed Measure Bill of Rights is vague and broad in language, and that it poses unwarranted risks to efficient management of water resources, could hinder conservation efforts, and detracts from the public's trust. That quote and the mention of anticipated significant legal complications and increased regulations from EWEB doesn't get much broader and vague and scare tactic messaging than the claim EWEB has of the watershed measure. Robert McFarland writes in his book, Is a River Alive? I sometimes wonder if the rights of nature is just serving as a proxy in an asymmetrical power situation that already exists, irrespective of the river's actuality. For it not be happening, not just among indigenous communities or among artists and writers and fringe weirdos like us, but also actors, corporate actors, industrial actors, the whole cast, the power holders. We need to quit being actors and to work collectively and embrace the Watershed Bill of Rights. Thank you.
Patricia Hahn, followed by our last speaker, Joe Mall.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Patty Hine. I'm here on behalf of 350 Eugene in support of ballot measure 2373. 350 Eugene has been educating our community about the effects of global warming and advocating for solutions for over a decade. Our goal is to avoid the catastrophic breakdown of ecological systems caused by an overheating planet. As you may know, 350 is the safe upper limit of parts per million of climate warming carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Before the Industrial Revolution, the ppm was 280, and now it's hovering around 430 and rising. We're setting temperature and drought records every day, and the Earth has exceeded the 1.5 C limit set 10 years ago at Paris. All the indicators of a healthy planet are accelerating in exactly the wrong direction. We need bold policy changes now to reverse these trends. This measure will not solve climate change, and neither will it stop all corporate harms, but it is a step in the right direction and frames a more holistic way of addressing environmental harms. For example, our coastal rainforest is one of nature's greatest climate solutions for its natural sequestration and storage of CO2. But we're racing to clear cut these irreplaceable forests at an alarming pace at exactly the moment we need them most. Despite the devastating effects on humans, animals, and plants and water, We also spray poisons on these areas from helicopters. We know this practice is harmful, and this measure can address such harms. Detractors, especially those funded by the timber industry, say that this law will bring about lawsuits and litigation. But that argument is the default response whenever a new law limiting corporate power is introduced. We see this measure as a step in the right direction. We support establishing greater protections for water and watersheds. We support holding corporations to higher standards for their industrial activities. We must insist on new laws to protect our communities and nature from harm, because the laws we have now are not doing the job. The environmental challenges we face are unprecedented. The window to act is closing. Nature is not a commodity to be monetized. Unlike corporations, nature's alive, and we must stop slowly killing it. We must change our thinking now, and we should start by protecting watersheds. Thank you.
Come on.
Chair Brown, Commissioners, Joe Mall, Mackenzie River Trust. I'm not here to speak on the aforementioned described proposal. I will just say, though, that on Tuesday, April 7th, the Mackenzie River Trust and several of their partners in the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network are sponsoring an open public forum with both pro and con, and we're trying to get somebody to speak to governance at the state, local, and national level at a site to be determined, likely one of the high schools in town. We just have some logistics. So Tuesday, April 7th. We are also in June going to have Robert McFarland here as a speaker. He has done far more than his latest book, and look forward to that. I'm here tonight because I can't be here in April and probably not May, so I wanted to thank Frank for the leadership that you've shown and encourage the commissioners to follow the lead under his leadership that has seen great investment in the Mackenzie River watershed with the aforementioned development of the water site on the main stem Willamette just below the confluence, something you've heard me encourage before, continued and growing investment in the health of the Middle Fork and the Coast Fork rivers. I think many of you know that we're in the midst of a community engagement, partner engagement at this stage, program for the development of programs at the Willamette Confluence. Yesterday, members of the Springfield Utility Board staff and EWEB staff were in one of our conference rooms meeting with a number of other partners, talking about how we can use that larger area at the Willamette Confluence for both protection of drinking water by investing upstream in both forks, working with the Corps of Engineers who is manipulating dams differently, changes in sedimentation. And again, it was just a perfect example of the collaborative spirit and meaningful action that has been taken under your leadership, Frank. So just wanted to thank you for all you've done for us. And it's been hard. You've done two things. You have consistently supported staff by baking that investment in watershed health into the annual EWEB budget, and that goes miles. But you also pivoted really quickly and very creatively following the Holiday Farm fire in a way that made a big difference in our ability to invest in nature-based solutions in the Upper Mackenzie River watershed. That's paying off now as we're starting to see more sedimentation following the fire, and we're going to see a lot more. There's no question about it. So I hope that the commissioners and all of the staff will continue to see that legacy and build upon it. And I just want to thank you for that. And with permission to approach, I would just like to give you a small bit of thanks. It's a Mackenzie River Trust hat. If you don't like the color or the fabric, you can come and we have a few different ones at our office.
Is that it, Joe? You done?
That is all. Thank you.
Okay, well, now we have a new thing. Thank Frank.
Yeah.
So,
It's just right. It's
okay. Well, that will close. There's nobody else signed up, Holly?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and public comment period and ask for comments from commissioners. Sonia.
Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I appreciate the passion. I appreciate the effort. I appreciate all of the the work that has gone into putting this measure and the people that have spent countless hours getting signatures and all of that for this. And it warrants additional attention. I mean, looking at what we do here, I mean, I've spent almost 10 years of my life on this board, coming here every month, reading 500-page packets when I could be sleeping or spending time with my family to help protect the watershed and the environment that we in the community that we share. And it's so hard to look at this and say, okay, well, we have this measure that from the outset, it sounds wonderful. I mean, from my perspective, it sounds wonderful. I mean, we don't want these chemicals in the community. We don't want people harmed by that. I support that. I actually just spent the last 8 days, most of 10 hours a day, writing grants for watershed protection education. And so for me, this is such a hard measure to look at when underlying it, there are other challenges. And I asked for the pause on it last month. One, I was sick and couldn't be here in person. And two, I wanted additional time because, you know, there are different viewpoints. There's the viewpoints of the people who put the measure out there. There's the viewpoints of their opponents. And it's hard from an EWEB perspective to take any of that and not think, okay, well, it's biased in some way, right? So what that allowed time to do, and I did meet with the proponents of the measure. I also attended other forums. So there was a forum that they were invited to. There was a forum that the chamber held. I attended both of those just to get feedback. I also went, we took information from the proponents of the measure and sent those questions to our lawyers to get feedback. It was incorporated in it because the only way to get from my perspective, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how this plays out in the courts. All I know is that every time we have to try something in the courts, it costs millions and millions of dollars. And I am loath to line the pockets of lawyers any more than it already happens. Because the first time I ever voted for a rate increase was right after the Holiday Farm fire, and it was $4 million to shore up our water protection efforts. I mean, we put more money into our watershed protection efforts than any other organization publicly in this community. And we weren't even consulted about this at all. And we provide the main water source for the people who drink water here. So for me, that's very frustrating that we weren't even talked to. And that's part of the problem with the ballot measure process, is that it doesn't allow for that iteration. So now we're at this place where people who, with wonderful intentions, have gone through all of this effort to get it, but they didn't get feedback from other people that it's going to harm. This could actually harm other watershed protection efforts that we have. And that's not from the logging industries lawyers, that's not from that's from EWEB lawyers looking at this measure and saying what the impacts would be. They're not beholden to anybody else but us and our constituents, the people who we have to report to and pay rates to. And so for me, this is just, it's incredibly unfortunate that it does have these other consequences. I mean, broad and undefined terms, expanded standing to sue, fee shifting provisions, daily penalties, these potential conflicts with our established state and federal law. I mean, for me, this vote tonight is just to let our ratepayers know that it could have a negative impact on them. And I feel beholden to let them know that risk is out there. I have constituents that come to me constantly and talk about how they can't even pay their bill and they're going to lose their power, which means their food goes bad, which means maybe they can't get up and get to work on time, like all of these cascading events that happen. And I have to look out for them too. And so for me, getting the information from the lawyers that represent EWEB, again, not beholden to any other interests, they're beholden to our interests, confirmed that there are some real big problems with this bill. And it tears me up inside that this is where we're at, because I care very much and support the efforts of pollution prevention, watershed protection. But I don't think that this personally is the measure that will get us there. And I would gleefully work with them after this all goes forward to work on something else that gives us the protection and works with our partners that actually do watershed protection. I had other watershed protection people that work upriver that contacted me, and we're also concerned about how it would impact their work. I mean, the fact that it's going to shut us down from an environmental perspective is very troubling. And I know I'm well over my time, and thank you for indulging me, but that's how I got to this place. And it wasn't because we were hiding anything. It wasn't because I didn't talk to the various people. I did a lot of soul searching on this because I think that's what this community deserves. Thank you.
Nothing. Mindy? Tim?
I know that this is, thank you, Chair. I know that this is our next agenda item, so I'll keep my comments brief. But I just want to thank you for coming out and sharing your perspective. My time on this commission so far, we've only had a significant amount of folks come out only a few times. And so I really do appreciate you coming and sharing your perspectives. So thank you.
Anything, General Manager? Okay, that will conclude the comments. I have nothing to say. The next agenda item is consideration of resolution 2607, the Watershed Bill of Rights, County Measure 373. Frank, you want to lead this discussion or you want me to?
I prefer you lead this.
Okay. We know what's in front of us. We've heard public testimony. We've heard in-depth response from our legal counsel, which we rely on and which we've all give different weight to. So I'm going to go around and by commissioner and just see where they are. And then we're going to call the question. So Mindy, would you like to start?
So I agree with the petitioners here that industrial and agricultural runoff needs to be stemmed and that polluters should pay for their cleanup 100%. I back that 100%. I also believe that EWEB has been excellent stewards of the watershed, and we've shown that through our investments. The idea that we've decided to make sure that the watershed stays clean instead of treating the water after taking it in and cleaning it up. But I do believe, after hearing from our attorneys, that this ballot measure is too broad because so much of what we do impacts the watershed. And even though we know that we're doing good work, it still opens us up to a whole host of litigation. People litigate all the time. We pay millions of dollars in fighting lawsuits or settling with people or whatever. And I feel that if this were to pass, that would just increase that kind of litigation. And it would not only cost us more money, but it might delay important time-sensitive work. And I also want to just speak to the concern that we didn't name out all the different projects or programs that this would impact. But because our work touches the watershed in so many ways, both in terms of our drinking water, but also our hydro projects upriver, I just feel like there's too much to say to list out programs or projects that would be affected by this. So I would love to see another iteration of this. I would like to see one that, like Sonia said, that is written in conjunction with the people that work on the watershed, because I do think that we all want the same thing. And so I support the resolution that we have, but sadly, I don't feel good about it.
Thank you, Chair. To the comments about financial donations to another commissioner, I'm not going to make comments on that. That's outside of, I think, my scope as a commissioner here at this board meeting. So I just want to make sure that that's heard. We have a responsibility to protect our ratepayers and protect our environment and protect our community. And that includes our watersheds. And I agree with my fellow commissioners who have spoken up so far that this measure's language is broad and challenging to so many different things. Last month, I said, and I'll say it again, that I believe that this measure is incomplete, that it has not been fully thought through, or that all of the different perspectives of it have not been considered. And I think part of that is that other direct providers to our watershed and to our rivers were not communicated with. And so a question that comes up, for example, that I have in mind is our watershed territory, our watershed, the watershed lines do not follow county lines. So what happens when something's cut in half? It just is unclear to me. There's so many other holes that I see in this, including, we heard testimony about folks who, that there's ways to address lawsuits and that frivolous lawsuits will not go forward. I don't have that confidence. And I believe that it will result in more lawsuits to this agency and to our community. And I think that two direct outcomes will come of that. One is that likely ratepayer or rate increases to our customers overall because of the many amount of lawsuits. And two, and which I find to be extremely troubling, is that anytime a new program or effort will come forward from EWEB, there will be a pause or delay of that effort because we would be afraid of lawsuits or other issues at that point. That's my fear, is that the good efforts that EWEB does would be delayed or even paused or stopped before they even make it out because of this measure. The hope that it will be, the barriers of this will be figured out through the court system or through our county commissioners, I think is just a final conversation that should have occurred and should be a part of the measure language itself, rather than relying on our court system and relying on our county commissioners. I am going to join my fellow commissioners. Regardless of how this moves forward, I would love to work on a measure that addresses the needs of our community, that gives our water rights, and that gives the our community the opportunity to advocate for themselves. But I'm not willing to do so, or I'm not willing to advocate for that with this particular measure, knowing that it could likely raise rates and pause our incredibly necessary programs and efforts in the watershed. So I'll be supporting this resolution. Yeah. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for sharing your perspective. I know I'm a little over time, but where I am on this in particular is exclusively the administrative part of it. I support everything that you're saying of addressing climate change, addressing our polluters, and fighting on this. It is just the process that has given me pause. And I think it's my responsibility as a commissioner to let my constituents know that this may cause significant harm. Thank you.
John Borowski.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming out. Again, this is something that I don't think any of us here sitting at this board take lightly. Protecting our watershed is something that this board was founded on 95 years ago. It's my fiduciary duty as a board member to look out for my ratepayers, my constituents, and the organization as a whole. The information that I've received through reading and studying the ordinance or the ballot measure, what we've gotten from our legal review of how it may affect us going forward, has led me to this point. As far as the drafting of the resolution, there may be issues with it, and I can concur with that. Because this was a ballot measure, staff wasn't able to draft the resolution. That was something that was done by me in consultation with legal help, but I'm not a ordinance drafter or a resolution drafter. I did my best. And if there's vagaries in there, I apologize for that. But I put something before us that I felt was best for the organization as a whole. I've been following this ballot measure for well over 2 years when it first started gathering petitions. I did not come to it lightly. I've been following it all along. Contributions to my campaign for city council are completely unrelated to my vote tonight. Supporting I'm here exclusively in my role as an EWEB commissioner. So just let it be known that that has nothing to do with how I came to form my decision on this. I have researched this and felt that it has impacts well beyond what the petitioners are hoping to achieve. And so with that, I would be in favor of the resolution before us. However, if my other commissioners feel that it would be appropriate for me to recuse myself, I would be happy to do that. But like I said, anything that I have to do with my campaign for city council has nothing to do with the vote that I'm taking tonight.
Thank you. I'll go last like I always do. I'd like to thank John for you bringing this to our attention, but it was coming to our attention anyhow. And I'd like to thank Sonia for delaying it. So make sure we had the extra time to vet this properly and to give this the consideration it deserves. There are some people in this room that can attest to my commitment to clean water. That's why I'm here. I joke that I still don't know what a kilowatt is. I probably don't. I'd flunk that test. But more importantly, I've walked the talk. I've written a lot of checks. I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars cleaning up the rivers, hiring the sheriff's work crew and getting work crews out. And some of you have been lucky enough to participate with me in doing that. And I've physically cleaned up the rivers for decades. Can't do it physically anymore, but I'm probably the best clean water proponent you've ever seen. But I also understand ambiguity and I understand uncertainty. And uncertainty and ambiguity creates a risk. And the inference that, about the donation, I mean, we're acting on behalf of the ratepayers. And to take that to that inference would say that no ratepayer could make a campaign contribution because our actions tonight are in the best interest of the ratepayers. And so when you say that you can't support somebody because, I mean, we're doing this for the ratepayers and for what I believe is the good decision. If they come back and say they've got a better ordinance that's well written, that has some specifics and the metrics in it, and involve us in the conversation, I'm all for that. But the way it's written, I can't support it. So I too am going to support Resolution 2607. So with that, I'm going to say, is there anybody else that has anything for the good of the order? And if not, I'm going to call the question. If not, then I'm going to call the question. Is all those in favor of passing Resolution 2607 regarding the Watershed Bill of Rights signify by saying aye and raising your hand? Aye. Opposed? None? Carries unanimously. That concludes this agenda item. Thank you very much. Now something a little easier. Consent calendar A.
I move to approve consent calendar A.
Is there a second? John? 5. Full item 5. Okay. So consent calendar A, absent item 5. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Number 5. Who staff gets to talk to that, or John?
This is just something that I would hope to get maybe a memo on at some point. So this is the acquisition of a new dump truck. And the question I have in the AIS, it says the acquisition replaces one existing dump truck with generation utility that has surpassed the useful life, thereby ensuring continued operation. I have no problem with this. I just would like to know, and it's probably somewhere buried somewhere, but what is our replacement schedule on these types of equipments and those types of things. And this could come in a memo or whatever, because I'm sure different equipment has different things, but I know that in the past on other organizations that I've dealt with, when there were budgetary problems, you know, one of the areas that they looked to was saying, okay, maybe this truck can go one more year type of a deal. So I just want to kind of get an idea of what our lifetime of our hard assets are and how the replacement schedule goes. I have no problem with buying a new dump truck.
No, I was, yeah, I was just going to say that we can get you a lot of detail regarding this. Gary can, who's our fleet supervisor, can elaborate a little bit further tonight. But a lot of this depends on the hours of the vehicle, not just the years. So there's a combination there. And we do a lot of tracking on the trade-off between capital replacement and increased maintenance costs. And so we'll be happy to get you a full report on, and it could vary class to class. And
absolutely,
if Gary wants to elaborate, since he's here,
since we've got time and we've got man here, if you want to step to the microphone, state your name for the record, and maybe you can eliminate a staff report by just giving John the answer.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gary Lynch, I am the fleet supervisor, and I've been with EWEB about 17 years. To answer your question on our dump trucks, we look at miles, hours, and how they're used, and we look at age. Our typical replacement on the dump truck starts as early as 15 years, and when we have more of a minimum maximum, when they get up to around 18 years, we really start taking serious looks on them. In this particular case, we're over the 20-year mark. One of the things we look at is it capable of doing the job that we intend to. When this dump truck was purchased 20 years ago with the first initial on here, up where it uses, we use this truck on the McKenzie Road and Highway 26, if you know, traffic is more and more. So over time, we've increased trailers, we put in bigger backhoes. And one of the biggest challenges the crews brings up to us is we get on the road, but we can't get up to speed. We can't maintain road speed on there. So that's probably one of the drivers we looked at. We've had a lot of purchases trying to get our line crews, buying bucket trucks and getting some things in order to where they could perform on it. And we've delayed this particular truck for years. And it's up to the cycle where we're able to do that. We anticipate in the next couple of years, we're going to be backing off. But this is the year that we kind of figured that we can't take this one any farther.
Great. Thank you very much for that. That's encouraging. When I heard 15 to 20 years, that's great. You know, if we can get 15 to 20 years out of a heavy piece of equipment, that's very encouraging to me. And I know that you guys do good work and will maintain it to the best of your ability and keep it going. But I just wanted to kind of learn more. That's how we make good decisions, is by asking questions and learning more. So thank you for answering that.
And with that, I'll reply to Frank and give you a replacement table that we use for all our equipment. So as you go in future board decisions, you know kind of what we look for when we look at it. Thank you.
Frank, you had a last word?
Yeah, I just had to add one more thing. I appreciate, and Gary knows this. I did want to acknowledge the comment you made about sometimes you turn dials when you have budget constraints. And I know that Gary has responded and altered plans and decisions based on interactions with Assistant General Manager Deborah Hart when it comes to looking at budgets, and over time feel really comfortable with the process that we have that looks from time to time what's the trade-off and the constraints on the capital side versus the O&M side, and turning those dials when necessary. And I did want to acknowledge that, and it's a tool we'll continue to use going forward.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm a huge proponent of maintaining our assets and making sure our assets are in being replaced at the appropriate time. I'm very much in favor of that. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of get that, learn about, okay, this is how long we can get out of a dump truck. This is how long we can get out of a backhoe. This is how long we can get out of a lightning truck, right? So thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for item number 5 on consent calendar A.
Move to approve item number 5 on consent calendar A.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. It passes. Consent calendar B.
Move to approve consent calendar B.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Next agenda item, Lisa. Supported consent, Jacobs, DBA CH2M Hill, Carmen-Smith Engineering Services.
I was originally going to stay at my seat, but I understand there are some questions, so you don't have to crane your head. I'm moving up front. I'm here today to just give you a little bit of context around the pretty large consent item we have on the calendar this evening. Knowing that our Jacobs contract is a very large request for funds, the board understandably has had questions about the scope and cost of implementing the license requirements at Carmen-Smith, particularly around fish passage at Trailbridge Dam. We thought it could be helpful to provide you with an opportunity to ask questions prior to taking action to increase the authorized spending limit. I'm going to give you just a real brief synopsis of what you're seeing tonight. But in short, the scope of the license required projects has expanded over time for 2 primary reasons. Mandates from FERC to address dam safety concerns and regulatory requirements for protected species. These increases in scope have created additional cost. For context, Jacobs, who's been our design engineer for many, many years, has completed a significant amount of design work for Carmen-Smith license implementation already. Projects include completed design for the load bank and replacement of the Trailbridge debris boom. And prior to the discovery of sinkholes in Trailbridge Reservoir, they completed 90% design packages for both upstream and downstream fish passage. Once the sinkhole analysis was complete, we reinitiated design of the upstream and downstream fish passage projects in 2025. These designs are being revised to incorporate the risk reduction measures associated with the sinkholes and revised seismic and stability requirements. So the consent calendar this evening requests funds of $4.55 million to authorize work that's already underway on those projects I just talked about, including the load bank. Now, as you know, we worked closely with federal fish agencies in 2025 to address concerns about challenging hydraulics in the tail race, the area right before, or excuse me, right downstream of Trailbridge Dam. Those challenging hydraulics raised some concerns that the trap and haul facility in that location, which is currently required by the license, would be ineffective. The outcome of those agency discussions is to move that trap and haul facility a few hundred feet downstream and build another structure called a tail race barrier. That change requires additional design work. So in addition to the $4.55 million it's already committed to projects, and would note is just under the 25% threshold for bringing things back to the board. In addition, this evening, we are asking for an additional $3.6 million for that work for the revised location of the trap and haul facility, in addition to some other projects, including Smith Spillway Expansion Project, to incorporate updated seismic requirements. And then we need additional construction and dam safety review support for some of those previously designed projects. So lastly, we understand and share the board's concerns about cost. That's a concern for us as well. Because we've had a recent modification to our plans for fish passage and are currently in the design phase, we don't have fully updated construction cost estimates yet. But we will be including estimated costs and for both design and construction in the capital improvement plan progress in July. And then we'll also be providing a more comprehensive update to the board later this year when we have a better sense of those full construction costs and how those compare to the initial budget.
Okay, I know I have questions, if I may.
Yes.
Okay, when I jump the queue. Okay, so this is a significant increase. And cost is, when we first, back in 2008, got our permit or whatever it was, Carmen wasn't financially feasible. I mean, we had Ford-powered prices of $220 a megawatt. Good thing is we had the survey problem. Everything got delayed. The market crashed. and we're back to this now. So here we are, all this big cost. This is just design on one little aspect of it. And so, you know, all this money, another 40% above what it is, but how do we know we're getting a good deal? I mean, I'm going to use the example of when in the state of Oregon decided to seismically upgrade the Capitol. They started at 300 million. They're at $1 billion right now because they keep telling them, we got to do more. We got to do more. How do we know we're getting a good deal on this 46% increase? How do I tell a ratepayer that this is a competitive, because this bid wasn't competitive. They just told us what it was going to cost. And if I'm wrong, tell me. But how do we know that we're not, you know, this is a good bang for the buck? How do we know that? And I don't mean to CH2M Hill, but I got to look out for the ratepayers because every one of these is going to cost somebody some money. This money just isn't going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it is a good question, you know, and I would answer it this way. Jacob's been working on this project for a very, very long time. Right. They have a lot of site-specific knowledge that they incorporate into our designs. If you're talking about alternatives, would we get a better deal from somebody else? I can almost guarantee you that getting somebody else up to speed to be able to do this work as efficiently as Jacobs is able to do would probably not be cost effective. That said, we do have a pretty robust process for looking at bids. They don't just tell us what it's worth. They give what it's going to cost. They give cost breakdowns that are thoroughly looked at by our engineering team and our and Patty Boyle, our contracts supervisor. So they're not just, you know, giving us a sheet and saying this is what it's going to cost. It's broken down very, very detailed, and that's reviewed by us and to ensure that we feel comfortable with what they're proposing.
We don't have an owner's rep. I mean, kind of like the private sector, if you're doing a $20 or $30 million project, you hire an independent third party that doesn't have a dog in the fight to tell you whether or not this makes sense. And
we do have a dam safety's owner's rep.
Dam safety, but I'm talking about this.
But most of the cost increases relative to this project are from dam safety requirements. There's some things associated with protected species, certainly. But our dam safety owner's rep and our internal dam safety team is working with the Carmen license implementation team and Jacobs to determine the scope of the dam safety, you know, requirements needed in the design. So for that portion, I feel pretty confident that we've had a lot of eyes on it, and we feel pretty good that we're moving in the right direction.
To my last one, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. What if we said no? What would happen?
What if we said no to incorporating the dam safety?
No, about this. Just say, look, this thing is out of control. We need to cut costs because someday we're going to have to start saying this. This thing is costs keep going up and up and up, and we're pushing our ratepayers to a point where they're gonna be crying more at the podium than they are already and out in the field. And our job is to represent them. And when I hear people tell me that they can't afford $2 a month, that tears me apart. And this is we're going to have to push this back somehow, someday.
Yeah, so if the board were not to approve the contract this evening, what that means is we wouldn't be able to advance work on license required projects. Many of you know the road we've been down over the last several years by being delayed due to dam safety reasons in implementing our license required projects. That has actually cost EWEB ratepayers a lot of money in litigation costs and, you know, a lot of additional sort of other ancillary scope changes over time. I wouldn't recommend that because I think ultimately that would cost more money over time.
But
your question is a fair question, though, and that's why we have committed to come back to the board later this year with a more comprehensive look of what the Carmen license implementation program looks like, what it costs, how does that compare to what you know, the original estimates were, more information on where those scope changes have occurred. And I think what I'm hearing from you is also a desire to have some information around how we answer that question is this still a project that EWEB wants to invest in? And in order to do that, we really need to look across the scope of our portfolio and how that relates to what other replacement power might look like.
I mean, I'm going to support it and we're too far into it. I mean, for a big, good business decision. It's just that at some point, this board, or at least I'm going to start pushing back. And I just want to make sure that message gets, I'm not picking on you, but I told you I was going to pick on you, but about costs, because we have to be cost conscious. And I know that, and you're going to have to push back on them and say, you're going to have to sharpen your pencil and knock $500,000 off this, or 50,000 or whatever. Every dollar counts. So thank you very much for tolerating me. John?
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of like you sign a contract with FERC and with the settlement parties, and then you've got to live up to that contract, and things change. So that's kind of where we're at. Like, my question is not to Lisa, it's going to be to Deborah. Where's the money coming from?
Primarily in the long-term financial plan, Carmen will be bond funded. And yes, bonds put pressure on rates as well as cash funding. And I am hearing you all on the topic of affordability for sure.
Okay, so just to be clear, so possibly some of those bonds that we asked the city of Eugene for last month could be this could be paid for out of part of that bonding capacity that we got approved from the city.
I expect that Carmen expenses will be coming out of those bonds when they're issued in June.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? If not, then Frank, go ahead.
Just one comment, President Brown, commissioners. It's not directly related to only this project. One of the things that we are looking at, and we think it's prudent to do this, is to look at a number of different capital scenarios going forward. This is not the only big project that the electric utility will be faced with, and we want to have a really good understanding of the trade-offs when we come to the board and not only look at this strategically, but also relative to what we can afford and the trade-offs we're going to need to make going into the future. And so some of that may start with the long-term financial plan, capital updates, but we know that we're going to have to turn dials in various directions to be able to balance the fact that, yes, we do have assets that we need to upgrade, modernize, maintain. We have made commitments around licenses, but we also know that there are constraints and other values that are at tension with that, including affordability. And so there will be more to come on that. I know we're working on that. And so that's something that you'll start to see a little bit more of when it comes to looking at future scenarios.
John, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted a question. Smith River Reservoir, is that going to open this year?
Yes, all the recreational facilities will be open later this year. I know that Patty Boyle is working with the Forest Service, and Adam Spencer are in our communications team to kind of put together a, some sort of announcement or celebration around that.
I want that date. Email.
It's May.
Is the board going to preview it?
That's right. Thank you.
Tim, you had a comment?
An entire board agenda item. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I just want to echo my fellow commissioners. I think that there's a lot of benefit to Carmen-Smith, and also I'm recognizing it's grown, I think, since before my time, and also just since. And there's a special place in my heart. It was the first place that I toured with you, and so I'm truly grateful for this project, and also affordability does come to mind, I think, every single time I think of Carmen-Smith. And so I still see the benefit. I still see the pro-con list, and it's still heavy on the pro side. And so that's where I'm at, but I also just want to share my concerns there. I think my question is going to be a question back to you, and it's is there a question that you wish that we asked that you were hoping to have answered tonight?
That's a really good question, and I can't think of anything. I appreciated the question of what happens if it doesn't get approved. I think that's a really important thing to note. But I can't think of anything otherwise. But thank you. Thank you for your work.
Any other questions or comments? For this is an action item. They entertain a motion to adopt the increase in the contract for design services.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. It's break time. And so it's 6:55. We'll reconvene at 7:05. Thank you. The utility Q4 2025 year-end results, Frank Lawson.
President Brown, Commissioners, good evening. Wanted to, first of all, before we get into the full agenda, I did want to acknowledge the fact that you did receive a 111-page report associated with this agenda item. The reason I mentioned that is that we started to do this a few years ago. We did not do a quarterly report regularly. We did not do an annual report in the style and with the information that you've been receiving. And I have to acknowledge and appreciate our management team, our executive team, the subject matter experts that contribute to the contents of this. This is probably the best report that we've produced. It told a story. It highlighted the good, the bad, and the ugly of the details of the operation, where we are with our strategic and annual goals. And I did want to thank staff for what I consider the quality of report that we always intended to produce. We'll continue to improve it. It's always an opportunity when you establish some kind of cadence or pattern that you can continue to improve it, and we'll continue to do that over time. But this is, I think, by far the best one that we've produced along the way, and hopefully it'll continue to evolve. Also wanted to thank Holly for wrestling through the formatting that we basically change every month because part of continuous improvement is you cause change. And so I want to appreciate her patience and the patience of the people who have to contribute to this, because we change the requirements often, and they're really starting to own the results, and we really appreciate that. This evening, I thought I'd run through a few of the highlights with commissioners, in particular in two different subject areas. One is kind of operationally where we stand. I won't read the slides item by item, but use it to provide some guidance around some of our performance metrics, and then finish up with the status of our goals, and then also acknowledge some of the decisions and the work that you as commissioners have made in the last year, specifically 2025. Financially, we're in pretty solid shape. I would say that we had positive net income in both utilities. Our metrics are in good shape. There is one metric that we'll have to continue to keep an eye on in both utilities. It's called return on net book value. It's one where you're looking at your net earnings versus your book value. There are shifts to that over time, in particular in an asset-based organization like we are, as you're replacing assets and your net income versus your assets. As your assets increase in their net value, that has a dampening effect on this particular metric. But it also is something to keep an eye on over time, given that it's the relationship of your ability to continue to make those investments and pay those investments back. And so those two on both utilities were not quite where we want them to be, and it's something that we'll be taking a look at. We also have to appreciate the fact that when we look at all of the pressures on energy and water utilities, the work that we have done at your direction, this is typically part of the cycle where we bring some intended budgets and assumptions in usually June or July. And by the time we wrestle through and look for opportunities to make choices and savings, we come back ultimately with rates and 3.9% on electric residential, or that was average, and 6% on water were the rate impacts. And we continue to understand and look at the affordability pieces, but also recognizing that there are a number of different influences on the financials of both utilities, and we are cost-based. And so we do recognize that costs directly translate into rates. In 2015, the period of time, just for context, I think it was between 2012 and 2015, the electric rates were increased 78% in that particular period of time. I think you probably remember that, Commissioner Brown. And our affordability factor was well over 4. It was probably in the 4.3 to 4.5 rate ratio. That is now down to 3.2. A number of years of work over time. We continue to look at that in particular as it relates to burden. And we refer to utility burden, that's both water and electric. The state of Oregon recognizes energy burden at 6% of an income level. We did significantly increase, as you can see from the chart there, in our contributions to customer care. Some of that was in response to federal restrictions or limitations, changes, and some of those we felt like was appropriate given the impact that we have on the community. I won't talk as much about some of the other slides. I think that, as you know, safety, and I included wellness in this, is something that we pay close attention to. We've continued to see, I'll say, solid, good performance in the safety numbers that tend to be after the fact. They're post kind of lagging indicators. We've also seen a lot more participation in some of the leading indicators, like a good catch report. That used to be a close call report, and so we wanted it to be more positive, so we changed it to the good catch report. Significant opportunities that come out of those types of reports that lead to improvements and changes. One thing that not quite sure of whether this is a good thing or something we need to dive in further. We did have increased employee participation in our EAP program. That's Employee Assistance Program. And you can see things like anxiety, depression, emotional issues, various aspects. Some of those can be work-related, coworker conflict. These are things that the positive piece of that is that this is a service and a resource that's available, and we are seeing people use it. But the driving and root causes of those, whether those are just general stress in the environment we're in, or whether there's something specific we can look at as actions or things that we can look at or monitor, is something that we'll try to assess further. Reliability, with the exception of a few things that were specific metrics. One thing that really gives this context is the fact that we, in 2025, delivered 3.14 million megawatt hours. That would be 1 billion kilowatt hours, and also almost 8.23 billion gallons of drinking water, and had significant support that went along with that. And when we refer to sort of our operational flow, yes, that's water, yes, it's electricity, but it's also information, it's also money, it's also assistance, it's program delivery. And so we look at all those things when we consider the importance of the reliability of the services that we provide. Workforce trends, also operational. We did see a significant increase in the number of applications. Applications in particular per job opening. And so time to fill roughly the same as what it was the year before. We also really saw 30% filled internally, and also really looked at career advancement as a key part of our organizational succession. And so we did see some increases in that. I thought it was interesting also the reasons that candidates applied. And you can see really positive community impact. The importance of the work that we do in the community is a key driver for why people are interested in EWEB as an employer. The community impacts are vast and far-reaching. Some of those just are financial contributions, contribution in lieu of taxes. The other things that we do that really impact our community significantly are things related to programs and service delivery, incentives related to energy efficiency, conservation, 0 to low interest loans. There's a number of different programs that that we've been assisting our community with. 6,300 water leak notifications. I was one of those, and I'm not special in that respect, so really appreciated that. And then EWEB ambassadors are employees who are part of programs and outreach for particular events that we put on in the community, at least 700 hours. I'm not sure if Holly's shaking her head because at some point you I don't want to say stop counting, but you're estimating based on all of the different things that we're doing. And so really appreciate the things that we do as part of our specific professions and roles within the organization, but also the fact that many of these areas are people who are helping in the community with different events. And so it's related to work in many cases, sometimes it's not. Getting into some of the specific goal performance, there's comments about all of these. In general, wanted to appreciate a couple of things about the process this year. We did start to look at a more formal EWEB business management process, included and specifically emphasized continuous improvement for our core work, but also the development and implementation of a strategic compass that was going to guide the organization around goal setting, specifically strategic goals or breakthroughs. And so while we started out the year with a specific set of goals, we actually came to the board, back to the board in August with, I'll say, more goals, and they were revised. We ended up with 18 goals. And what you didn't see was the 34 different actions that those or milestones or activities, groups of work, we call them deliverables, that were used to gauge the progress of these goals. And so there's even another layer down that drove this. And overall of the 18 goals that we got your approval on in August, we fully achieved 14. There's a couple that are sort of on track with some things rolling into 2026 and the goals that we've worked with you on. And then there's a few items that we just had to look at prioritizing or tailoring a little bit. Progress made on all of them, but have to say that I feel pretty good about 14 to 16 if you count halves in there. If you get 100%, maybe you were sandbagging a little bit, didn't stretch enough. If you are much lower than that or only make it halfway, maybe you taxed yourself or were too ambitious. So we kind of feel like in the organizational goal world, being able to have significant achievement, progress on everything, but not fully on everything is probably the right balance. Now, I say that in the same presentation where the EAP participation was up, indicating job stress. So I have to tailor that just a little bit. I feel good about it, but I'm not sure that everybody feels good about that, depending on their role in achieving those goals. Many of these, very aware of, we reported on them at various times throughout the year. A lot of these are associated with the strategic plan and various phases and activities associated with the strategic plan, building the puzzle pieces to be able to eventually reach some of those goals around resiliency, energy optimization and delivery, and some of those things. So I think we have made progress on that, and we'll dive into some of these a little bit more if necessary. I did want to just take a moment at the end, commissioners, to thank you and acknowledge your guidance and your direction, not only on the goals and some of the operational issues, budgets, capital spending, that type of thing, but also to recognize that 2025, you made some really significant decisions. Everything from a $2 billion contract to looking at some local resources, Mackenzie Valley Service Territory. These are just a few, and the oversight of almost and governance and oversight of almost $500 million worth of an operation. And so really appreciate and want to thank you for that guidance. You also, that very last item, I really appreciate you spent some time recruiting a new general manager. And so I know that's a significant amount of effort, and look forward to seeing where the organization goes from here. But I did want to finish with that and thank you and really just thank staff for a really good 2025. We had a number of different interests and challenges and people telling us what was important to them along the way, and yet at the same time, a lot of successes, things like College Hill, for example, progress on the Willamette treatment plant on the water side, continued excellent water quality, watersheds in good shape. We continue to be active in that. So really do appreciate that, and would open it up at this point, President Brown, to any comments, questions, remarks, things you might have. I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm open to the floor. Anybody have any questions or comments? Sonia.
Well, thank you, and thank you to staff for another great year. Great, that's okay. Clearly,
we're just really dipping into the past on that one. Sorry about that.
I mean, many things were achieved. I think you're right on the kind of where we're at in the mix. You know, if you achieve everything, were we reaching enough? It seemed like there was a good mix in there. I did notice a couple of items that I wanted to call out. So I'll get into the comments and I'll make another question, then I'll get a comment in there. The write-offs that we had went to almost $500,000. I'm curious, is that reflective of some of the federal dollars too, that like the LIHEAP program and some of the other programs? I don't actually know where those are at right now, and I'm curious if some of that is reflective of other funding dropping off, not being available to people. And then it mentioned in there that we send it to collections, and I'm curious if we know what that process looks like, if that's something somebody could talk to now. If not, I'd be happy to get information later too.
Yeah, Commissioner Carlson, I'll just make a couple of remarks, and then I would ask Deborah Hart to elaborate a little bit. I don't believe that federal dollars rolled off at the period of time when we saw the most write-offs. I think many of these may have been pent up because we changed some of our processes. We didn't do all the normal processes as we were changing into a new system. And so I think some of that was either holdover or pent up. And that number is much higher than normal. We usually have really low write-offs historically. And it could be that the pent up was partly because we came off of a year or two of really heavy inflation. And so customers seeing other kinds of pressures as well. But I guess I would ask Assistant General Manager Hart to elaborate on that if she could.
I think people are actually messaging me about this question in real time. I don't think we have any evidence that it was lack of other funding. It doesn't mean that economic pressures on our community didn't contribute to that problem. We did have some transitional activities as we went from one system to the other at the end of the year previous and the beginning of this reporting year. To your question about collections, we write those off our books. We do send them to an outside collection agency. They do make an effort to collect some of those. And when we do that, then we identify those as paid accounts. Does that answer your question on the process?
It goes to like somebody is calling them or putting other holds on them. Is that, I mean, some of the process? Or is it really, it's more kind of written off? They don't have other levers they're using other than calling.
They're calling, and as to a collection agency's collection practices, I'm not entirely familiar. There are different times at which it could rise to lien status, but our bills are
And
relatively
we get
small.
money back. They don't like purchase it and then
We get money
deal with it.
back
We
when
get money
accounts
back
are-
when it actually gets collected.
When it gets collected.
And out of curiosity, you have any idea of like, I'm guessing we don't get much back. I'm assuming, correct?
I think that it's fair to say they take a sizable chunk, but I don't know the details of that contract.
All right, thank you.
And Commissioner Carlson, they go through our entire process before they ever go to collections. And so there's a rather it takes a lot for those to go to collections historically.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let others go and I'll get back to my other question. Thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments? I'll jump in then, John. A couple of questions, tree trimming. It looks like we're not keeping up to pace. On page 31 and 32, it looks like for the last year, our units, I'm looking at units per week and target, we're way below the target. And the same thing with the miles, the target, we're way below. And now that we're getting rid of the upriver, that was 3 crews. And we've got a new tree trimming company, and that concerns me about liability, especially with wildfire and South Hills. And what are we doing to address that backlog?
So there's a few things. So we dug a hole a few years ago. If you actually look at the 5-year tree trimming backlog, it's dropping. And that particular line is going down, and that's the backlog line. And so we are starting to make some progress. As far as priorities, we do look at high-risk fire zones and high-risk circuits as a priority. And so while some of them may be on a 5-year cycle, we do high-risk fire zones and spot checks on those annually. And so as a risk mitigation measure. And so, yeah, I think there is an opportunity at this point when we look at focusing on the urban side of our territory, that backlog can be lower even more.
And then another one, I know we're not supposed to get in the weeds, but you gave us the weeds and I'm getting into them. So $30,000 for a charger for an intercity electric bus, the University of Oregon. Do they have electric buses?
I don't know if that,
I mean,
specific
LTD
detail
doesn't
I can.
anymore, so
I would
I've
hope if
never
we were
heard-
putting a charger in that they would have
well,
the ability to use it. But I can follow up
I'm
on that,
just
Commissioner.
curious.
No,
They-
it's a fair question. It's a detail that I opened up. So
No, you put it out there. So.
I know, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you calling me
then-
on it, but we'll follow up on that just to
And then
make sure.
can
And
you-
I'm sure probably Deborah or Julie, if she was here, would be getting the text answer to that probably as we speak.
Maybe they've got electric buses. I don't know. I just know they didn't work for LTD and I was just wondering about the U of O. And lastly, I know that usually I used to be able to find out all the contracts that we don't see, you used to publish just to see where the money was going and what it was for. I didn't find that in here.
It is in there.
It is in
It's quarterly basis. So
Yeah.
the quarterly version of that is in there.
Okay, that's fine. Then you can just, I'll find it. If it's in there, I'll find it. Thank you. That's all. I got.
And I will tell you, President Brown, that staff knows that you look at that specific report. And so we prepare accordingly. Just, this is the insider baseball right here, just so you know.
Just tell me where the bus charger is. John?
Thank you. And thank you for the positive report. Thanks to staff that helped implement all of our goals and policies. Again, I can see why they would be stressed. We put quite a bit on them. As far as the 700 hours of community service, I think that Holly could put probably 10 more hours on it just from making us read this, this 111 pages. I know it took me a couple hours, and I think 5 of us probably the same thing. So there's another 10 hours of community service that has gone into this community. You know, when I got on this board, it seemed every year I would hear the chime that we've got a lot of really big things coming in front of us this year. And every year we have, but every year we've seemed to chew through them and accomplish a lot of them and make good progress on the ones that we haven't, you know, fully implemented. And I think that that's a testament to our staff, the leadership, and this board as a whole, helping to set that direction. So I'm not going to get into the weeds. I'll wait for the long-term financial forecast to get into the weeds, and I'll leave this one alone. But thank you to everybody for all the hard work.
Sonia, you have another?
Oh, I was just the contracts are on page 59
Thank you.
of the packet. I did have one other question on, so on page 68, it talks a little bit about the water pack. And I know this is a look back at what we're at, but then it also says the summer forecast. And it's indicating on table 4, summer, it says forecast for summer. Is that correct? It's saying that it's forecasting we're going to be 101% for the Mackenzie watershed. That blows me away given that there is 0 snowpack right now. So and I've heard from others that other snowpack areas like in the Bonneville area, and I know I'm throwing this out there. I didn't get to warn you about this question. So
That's okay. I will, I'll take a look at that. Page 68, the reference there is not what.
It is, sorry, 28 of, it's 58 of, or 68 of the board packet. It's 28 of the quarterly report. I'm just very, very scared.
Yeah,
this summer. I don't know what's is coming up. And if this is actually the forecast, that's wonderful. I don't know how we got there with 0 snowpack, but.
Yeah, we'll double check that, Commissioner. I do know that just relatively speaking, the biggest impact for us tends to be in the Columbia Basin. That as far as actual water availability and production compared to the I'll say limited relatively number of resources on the Mackenzie. But I'll take a look at that one. That one doesn't feel quite right.
Okay, thanks.
If you've driven past Willamette Pass, you'll probably agree with me on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, I appreciate this. It only took me an hour to read this. I don't know what you're talking about. 5 hours? No, joking.
2 hours. 2 hours per person.
I'll just say we consider your time free, so Holly doesn't count it in the 700 plus hours. Just saying.
Should I not be clocking in? Is that? Oh no. I want to appreciate the amount of work that has gone into this, the amount of effort, and I think that we're just in general big picture at a time where a lot of organizations and a lot of communities are talking about cuts and dangers and challenges that they're facing. And while EWEB has our own, it's very heartening to see a lot of the good work and good efforts going forward and seeing them all just listed here. I was reminded again, I was going through the grant awards and just seeing in November the $500, very weedy, but the $500 towards food and through that effort when the federal government was threatening SNAP and just EWEB stepping up in that way is just is great. The one that stood out to me is the candidate reason for interest, and I don't know if candidates were maybe shy about talking about their interest in wages. EWEB pays well, but to see it so low on the reason people applied for a position here, I think is really telling of the work that this organization does and the priorities here as well. And so, and that the top one is positive community impact, just to tie that together. So I just want to also echo the appreciation to the staff and the team here, that I think everyone is laser focused in progressing and doing better and improving our community in so many different ways. And I think this document shows just that. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will just, as a little bit of context, I have, and this would be a good follow-up question for Deidre Williams, our Chief People Officer as well. Most of the time when you look at workforce motivation factors, compensation is not the first on the list. You know, historically, the ones I've seen are the meaning of the work, feeling like you're part of a team, like your work is leading towards something that is beneficial or significant. Those tend to rise above compensation, as well as the relationship you have with your teammates, those that of which you work with the closest. So it's not unusual to see that. It may be a little bit unusual to see the level of the ranking compared to the other things, but that partially that could be related to the fact that EWEB is very competitive from a compensation perspective, and we continually review that so that we are competitive in the market, and so that becomes not the issue as opposed to what the other issues are.
Mindy.
Just briefly, thank you and staff for putting this together. I think it's pretty awesome that we've achieved 14 out of the 18 goals. That's pretty remarkable. And as you get ready to hand off your position to your successor, I think it's really something to hand off an organization that is really doing so well and thriving. So thank you for that. And thank you all the staff who make that possible.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I think there are, you know, combination, as a number of you have mentioned it, there's a combination of risks and issues. So those do exist. At the same time, really the opposite side of a coin of a risk is an opportunity. And so we try to look at this as to how we can best operate for the community amongst the operating environment we're in. We're going to have different challenges in the next 5 to 10 years that were different from the last 5 to 10 years. Now, hopefully we don't throw COVID in the middle of it again, or some kind of pandemic, but we as an organization will be challenged a little bit differently. And part of our next steps, and we do this pretty regularly, but is to look out a number of years and say, what do we think those challenges and opportunities are? And what do we do to set up the organization to be successful under those conditions? And I think that will continue, especially around the business management system and how we want to continuously improve the strategic side as well as the operational side. So we will see challenges, and we have to prepare for those so that we can continue to provide really the critical services we do, and we'll be asked to make some different kinds of decisions.
Okay, that ends. Well done with the conversation. Frank?
Oh, she had her microphone.
I know, but she just doesn't turn it off. And so, well, Frank, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we'll just move on to the next agenda item unless you have something.
Yeah, and if there's other questions, I'd be happy to follow up during our one-on-ones and get any other responses to commissioners as a whole, the board as a whole. So.
Okay. If you want to stay there, we can just do future board agendas.
We can do future board agendas. I think that we are looking at a pretty busy April and May. May is at least my intended last board meeting in my official capacity. And so no lack of items really in April or May if you look at the content. So I think we've got a number of things related to things like watersheds and fees and SDCs and updates related to energy supply and other things. So it will be a pretty busy couple of months. And so, and then as was mentioned by Lisa earlier, some other updates further out in the year, specifically around Carmen-Smith. So we'll make sure we get those scheduled in.
Okay. Anything else on that? If not, then I'll get.
Just a heads up, I probably will be doing the April meeting virtually.
All right, then we'll just go to board wrap up. Sorry, it's getting over so early, but well, Mindy,
Nothing from me, thanks.
Tip, Sonia, John.
Just thanks to commissioners for the in-depth conversation that we had on the resolution earlier. I know it was a difficult process to go through. I am thankful for the thorough discussion and deliberations that we all had on it, and know that it wasn't an easy position to take, but I appreciate all the thought and energy that was put into it. And thank you. I think we have a really functional board here, and it's a pleasure to work with you all.
And I was remiss at the items from the board at the beginning. I wanted to compliment Jason Huser. I don't think we could have a better ambassador. The professionalism, his knowledge, his leadership, and I mean, he of all the 15 people around those tables, he was the star in the room, and it was looked to on that. He's highly respected, and I can't give him a high enough grade there. And then Frank, we need to get an order for your last meal. I mean, it's it's kind of like the last meal. So
that sounds very ominous, but
careful what you ask for. But no, we're going to make sure it's special. So whatever
right.
you want, you can have 3 items. And
all right, I'll give that some thought, Commissioner, in my spare time. But I would agree on the comment about Jason. I'm going to use an expression that Jason uses, and I think he punches above his weight when it comes to issues federally and at the state. And I know that's a boxing analogy, but it's one that he uses, so I can use it either for him or against him. He not only works well, Commissioner Brown, in those settings, but he works really well behind the scenes, developing relationships with other utilities and trade organizations and things like that. So we are lucky to have Jason and really appreciate his work.
Yeah, he did an excellent job. Anything else for the good of the order? Adjourned.